is a newer one. Okay. This next poem is a newer one. It's called Contemplating a Self-Portrait. First, it is a matter of focus. You must determine if to highlight how you are like anyone or how uniqueness rests its garments on your shoulders. Second, it's about tones. What shapes or colors best capture the wildness of the inner, outer selves, which in dreams tend to snarl at each other. Third, and most importantly, the question of honesty. Do you portray the rags that clothe your heart or the stillness of your brain? Or do you simply smile, hoping people will see contentment behind the eyes and gloss over the worry lines? Thank you. My first poet tonight is Scott Besh. Scott is a carpenter who enjoys drinking whiskey and listening to conversations between right and wrong. He seldom takes sides. Take it away, Scott.
Thank you, Ron. I'm going to read 3 short pieces from a new manuscript I've just finished. It's called When the Revolution Came Home. This one's called Viva Zapata. It was the early 70s. We were having tacos for supper, so Mom pulled down our perennial bottle of Zapata hot sauce from the cupboard above the cereal. We didn't eat tacos much, so it sat up there for years. This was before Hamburger Helper, when hard-shell tacos were a sensation. Besides home cooking, the only box options were TV dinners or Totino's frozen pizza. Zapata was the brand name before it became Zantigo. Zapata's ad campaign was badass. Zantigo was safer, not named after an armed revolutionary. General Mills owned it and didn't get where it was by naming product lines after confrontational historical figures, and Dad worked for General Mills, and that's why it sat in our cupboard. He photographed the bottle, he got to keep it. The cap was gunky and stuck to the glass because Mom didn't refrigerate condiments like mustard or ketchup. As I tried to unscrew it, a bubble grew out of gunk in the threads. The more I tried, the bigger the bubble got. When I poked it with my finger, the cap blew off and I got a face full of taco sauce. I ran to the sink and washed out my eyes. Wiping my face on the dish towel, I looked up to see a ragged circle of red on the kitchen ceiling with a cap stuck in the middle like a Veterans Day poppy. That's incredible, Dad pronounced. Did you see that, Elaine? That is incredible. Dad was astounded. But that was nothing new. He was astounded by all tragedies, great and small. And that's how it stayed for the next 5 months. Friends were amazed at first, then wondered why no one cleaned it off. That was a question I could never answer. We just got used to it. After a while, I thought it was kind of cool that Mom left it up there. What began as a blemish became a decoration. Over time, the edges crusted and the whole bloom darkened. I don't know what it symbolized, but the feeling was maybe Dad should. If Mom was waiting for him to ask, he didn't. He ignored the stain. Perhaps Mom viewed it as a miracle. A visible manifestation like the Shroud of Turin, proof that the unspoken truths crowding the room really were there. Thank you. The next one, this is called The Grisly Atoms of Advertising. In an era before logos were art, plastered across every shirt, jacket, and cap, back when all that unclaimed ad space was wilderness, vast and unexploited, Dad noticed me wearing a t-shirt from a car dealership. Across my chest, the logo read, baseball, hot dogs, apple pie, and Chevrolet. How much are they paying you to wear that shirt? He asked. Whenever Dad asked a question like that, I got pissed off. What I wanted to say was, fuck you. I said, nothing. Why would they pay me? It's a shirt. I got it for free. That's prime advertising space, Dad said. It covers your heart. They should pay you to wear it. They gave me a shirt, I replied. I didn't have to buy it. That isn't enough, Dad said. The last one is called The Kite. One Sunday at the grocery store, I studied that end of the aisle toy display while Mom did her shopping. There were 4 or 5 model cars and airplanes, bags of army men, plastic squirt guns, and cheap, scary baby dolls that wet their diapers. My allowance was a dime, and that made the choice easy, unless I wanted to find Mom and beg, which never worked. I purchased a Jolly Roger kite with wood struts. I unrolled it when I got home. There was no tail. Dad showed me how to make one from cut up t-shirt scraps and a length of string. His instruction was to make it as long as it needed to be. The ribbons of fabric I tied on didn't look like the pictures of kite tails I'd seen in books. They weren't brightly colored bow ties with crisp edges. They were lumpy and reminded me of Dad sitting around in his underwear. Disillusioned by uncertainty, I decided the tail was long enough and went outside. Dad was watching football on TV, Sunday papers scattered across the floor. I laid the kite out on the grass, uncoiled a few yards of line, and started running. It trailed behind at shoulder height, but the only passion it showed for flight was when it turned upside down and plowed into the ground. I'd have more luck dragging a pizza box into the air. A couple of years later, I won a kite for selling Scoutorama tickets. It wasn't anything I wanted, but better than a volleyball or a bell for my bicycle. The Scoutorama kite required no tail. It was tall and skinned with clear, rugged cellophane, silhouette of a red jet aircraft stenciled across its center. I snapped it together, tied on the line, took it outside, held it up, and the sky pulled it from my hands. I didn't need to run, just stood there and the line reeled off. The kite pulled on my arm like a dog wanting to run. I wound it back down and got on my bike and rode to the store. I decided on 2 balls of line, just in case. I stopped at Steve's on my way home and told him about the kite. He came over to check it out. I held it up and it soared, pulling out line. I tied on another spool, tied on the next, and it was gone in 10 minutes. It looked like a real airplane up there. I was too old for such illusions, but it was still pretty cool. By now, my little sister Nora was watching. To her, it was grand. She still lived in the world where new sneakers gave you the power to run faster and spring higher. When she climbed a tree and leapt to the ground, she hoped to clear the treetops and leave it all behind. She raced through the flocks of grackles, expecting to take flight as they rose around her. Nora and Billy traded off holding the reins while Steve and I rode to the store. Nora believed, hand over hand, you could climb that line to the kite. I knew that was impossible, but she was right about the feeling. A line cast to the clouds, bobber adrift, fishing for a world I couldn't reach. We returned with 4 balls of string and added them on. The kite nearly disappeared, became a red dot. Even Dad, that harbinger of hopelessness, came home from work, stood on the porch, shadowed his eyes with his hand, and said, "That's incredible." I tied the string to the clothesline pole like hitching a boat to the dock, and we all went home for supper. While Mom washed dishes, I dug through drawers and found another ball of string. Steve showed up with 2 more. Dusk was falling, and the kite had vanished. Strings stretched to infinity. Bats had begun their evening acrobatics overhead when Steve's parents walked over, following news of the mythical star. Our flag flew, a proclamation claiming things we couldn't touch. I wanted to leave it up there, make time stop, but I couldn't. I had to go to bed and get up for school. I realized this couldn't last forever. It would end up tangled in someone's TV antenna. If we pulled it down, we'd have it for another day. I tied the line to a scrap of wood and started winding. The lump of string grew thicker like a spider's web wrapped around a fly. Flashlight beams jotted across the sky like searchlights. Nora and Billy danced like primitives, like fireflies casting their glow. No one could believe how much line was on the stick and still no kite, until suddenly there it was below the treetops. When it was in my hands, the adults declared bedtime, the flashlights switched off, and everyone walked home, reeled back to their lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. That was excellent.
Thanks, Ron.
Next up, we have Jared Truer. Jared is a poet who also tells stories and writes songs. He teaches graduate level psychology online as well. Jared considers Minneapolis his home town and Minnesota his turf, having spent 61 years there. He dedicated himself to poetry many decades ago and has been published widely in small journals across the US and Canada. He has 2 collections of poetry, The Art of Dying and Bad Dreams of a Hungry Dog. For a few years now, he has lived in Arizona with his wife, 2 cats, and assorted road lizards. That was my dog, Clara, chiming in on the conversation. Take it away, Jer.
Okay. Thank you, Ron. And I enjoyed your poems, Scott. I've got a series of, this is part of a kind of a manuscript that I'm growing, page by page, of course. It's a series of, I call them mandolin songs. And this is number 1. I did not learn to play the mandolin, but it taught me nevertheless. Simple pentatonic melodies come from my fingertips on strings. I did not learn how to love, but you taught me nevertheless. Only a few notes, then silence. No human listens to me, but oh, the birds. Thank you. Number 2, soft breezes waft the notes away from the notes I pluck. Once here, now gone. I have no belief anyone hears, that anyone in coming years will read these words. Birds on the wire above sing out, as does my instrument. without any particular hope. Number 3, 4 pair of matching strings, not tuned to each other, dissonant and pain. Tuned to each other, beautiful, consonants, but all tuned to their true sound. Played together, harmony. All those years apart from you, a taut string, not plucked. Thank you. Number 4, hot breezes during autumn remind me of my many mistakes. My regrets remind me I lived and I got spanked by God. That is all I will say today. Much of what comes out is wrong. Let the mandolin sing instead. Thank you. This is number 5. The mandolin leans in the corner untouched for too long a time. Now it is sorely out of tune. Do you hear what happens when you are gone? Thanks. Number 6, we do not ask for the life we have, nor express gratitude for it. Is that why we awaken terror? The mandolin's taut strings shimmer silently in the darkness. No fear of being high-strung should the gods play upon us. Thank you. And number 7, my quiet joy keeps to itself. Nothing reveals it, nor do I often know. A faint power of knowingness shows just enough. Too much causes alarm. And so I play my mandolin, not planning what sound should come, even if it rings true. You see, I know how things roll, at least for a block or two. My quiet joy balances on a thin blade between the living and the dead. And this is my last one, number 8. For a long time now, I have crafted a persona with which to meet the world. And the world wants me to meet it vigorously, smiling, and overly confident, to be enamored with the glitter and gold. Lately, my soul countervails, argues that I could never play the game, not really. I find myself rising from the table of talking about who did what and I did this, and walking away without a word. What can be said anyway? Who would hear? The sparrow-laden branches of the tree out there beckons without speaking, and the wind rustles through the strings of my heart, a faint mandolin song. Thank you.
Thank you, Jer. Those were pretty cool poems.
Well, thank you.
Next up, we have Catherine Reed Day. Catherine's poems come to her on walks and in dreams. She works as a story coach, producer, community developer, and narrative identity specialist, which sounds like a pretty cool job. Awarded Bell Watts College's White House Poetry Prize, her poems have been published in Willow's Weep Review, Highly Sensitive Refuge, and the Park Bugle. Her opinion essays have been published by the Star Tribune and Minnesota Post. Her research on identity has been published in the Journal of Individual Psychology. Her personal mission is to live her creative love for community. Take it away, Catherine.
Thank you, Ron. It's wonderful to be here. I really appreciate being invited, and I'm excited to share some of my work with you. Most of it is all rather recent, and I want to acknowledge my writing groups and the Eastside Arts Council and Diane Jarvempa, who has been one of my mentors. So they really helped me. This first piece I'm reading was published in the Willows Wept Review about a year ago, and it's called Heat. Loud and in love, the women upstairs make songs in the springs, sigh, hang in hot corners. Cats cry in alleys, sniff the blind paths of bats. They fatten and long for gray wings. On a night like this, my father sweated on the Libyan beach, 1943, bloated corpses slogged ashore. I began to burn a white fleck deep in his belly as he coaled the dead. Upstairs, the women fall silent and cats fly at last. I enter the kiln of sleeping alone, light as a chain in a beggar's hand. Something waits in the dark landscape of dreams. It knows my name and calls me as a child would. This next one is, I like to write about ancestry and place. This next one is called Homeland. Here, the land is so wild, commandos train on it. Even the village drunks speak a language older than English, a music the Saxons never trusted. My grandfather's watch sings an altered time in my pocket, accounting old as the mountain I clamber to crawl up. Something in my blood catches on the twisting corners. Slowly, I know how this flinty trail ends. My name seems familiar to the stones, the gulls, claim they've known me for years. My hands reach for the wind as though it were a harp. I remember this fever has a name, Hireth, a gentle cancer which feeds in the heart's 4 rooms. I descend, a clutch of voices swim up from Capel Sion, seeking, as for centuries, the shifting doors of heaven. I know the words, I sing. Thank you. This next one is also place-based, but a little different. And it's called In This Place You've Come. Crazy with hunger and guns stored away in the hills, staff scurry, slick and practiced at reading needs and your bleached desires. Here, what the ocean washes up belongs to the ocean, no surprises. Here, what the snows of the north erased will soon return, if only for a moment. Here, even the lizards are on the payroll. Night wind comes up on cue. Here, if you leave your body at night, you will rise and join hands with those from the hills who saw no choice. Together, you will drift above green caves of the ocean, where sharks and rays circle and rise, circle and rise. One of the things I like to do is I've worked on some material that was really quite old. It was actually from my college days, but I've kind of re-distilled the material to bring it into present time. And this one is called Marian Bad Ledgers. She works the myth over and over every morning, a hum at the still point in time, a fluctuating prism of faith, an allegorical model for all human existence streams into blue. Word images flicker and the rear of the unicorn vanishes, an oratorio, a lesson in dreamscape. A maze of poetry and imaginary numbers. Natural history of consciousness rises on hesitant wax wings through interstellar space into paradox. Faith takes on magnetic proportions. She goes on when she can't see around the next corner. And this next one is called Song for an Unknown Woman. When you make yourself ready to leave, you slip on the necessary lie, worked and reworked by the priests, a ceremony of blessing waters, cold for the fires under your face, hot for the salt of your hips, warm for the closing the wound that was wonderful between your legs. Tonight you will listen to rain on the roof and your husband dreaming his dull delirium. Something you no longer need will fall away, departing through eternal ethers with whispers of the child waiting in the vestibule of creation. You will touch your face with invisible fingers. The ceiling will whisper, yes, you are beautiful. Pale and opaque, the dream child, witness to all before and after, harvest of sleeping lives, your first tears will taste like a kiss. I have a friend, this next piece is in tribute to a friend of mine who has cognitive impairment now. She was kind enough to take me to her place on the South Shore of Superior, and we had a favorite place we stopped, and this is in honor of that place and those people. And it's called Ancestors, Angels, and Absolution. Along narrow Highway 13 outside Superior, humble servant tends a tiny orchard and his assembled shrine, Mother Mary's apple farm. Cracked fingernails, pants pulled up high, extra fringed twine tie, cincher rope, a symbol of his devotion, apostle postulate. No one prays anymore, he declares, and offers instructions, insists we do not need to fall on our knees. All you have to do is wake up in the morning and say, thank you for another day. Not asking, but thanking. If you just pray, whole legions of angels await, ready to swoop in, assist you. Apples harvested, both weightless and heavy, Mother Mary's meadow abandoned now, her tender gone. Dark wet branches, leaves drift, pile and settle, damp and deteriorating, stink with fertile decay, stink of the dying. With thinning air comes the return of ancestor spirits, nudge us toward the direction we are meant to face. And I have two more. This is kind of a pair that I worked on. Again, these are some reworking. One is a reworking of a very, very old poem that I have turned into new form. And the other is a response to this one. And this one's called Elegy for Beelzebub and Me. Bit-bitten mouth, tethered to a city where lovers roam streets in nostalgic frenzy. Monotony rules days, deflated by absence. In 3 days together, we've substantially modified Diane Arbus. We shed time as easily as we slough off shoes at nightfall, our slurred over time trance. Passion slid through us like wind through clouds, mingling molecules. You steam about me on this muggy August day, bead on my upper lip, slide to the dimpled base of my spine, resting in two hollows before their final fall. You come to me in a wood by a spring, waters that cured hundreds of hypochondriacs, just as you wanted to cure me, an inhabited lunatic. My eyes burn from vision. I wash their lids in rain, hunch over, dip fingers, fire and water, smoke and steam, rarefied, do not mix. Sip from the glass the last of my tea, extract the wedge of lemon, chew its rind and choke on you, sleeping in my mouth. I spit, your curdled being lingers. My mouth moves in dumb speech. Your replies remain as mysterious as my silence. I find maturity by necessity, mothered by promiscuity. You slide out of my life with the hissing subtlety of a serpent. And my last one is called Inhabited Lunatic Evolving. In openness, an angel with a lion face grows in you, says no, says amazing. Give yourself permission to be in your full power. Transform shame with your indite. Give your shaman better PR. The one who puts hands on your shoulders says, you've cracked. Your suffering lives in the basement. Combine suffering with spirit. Anchor in love, in the animals, in the map. Ask, what part of Earth wants you to talk with it? Your on-off switch needs tending. A lighthouse calls you. Mother hawk nests there. Know when you've gone blind, like with family. Lights on, lights off. You are creating a whole world that wants to appear in you. Your healer is a journalist. Watch for questions, places, and landscapes. This world wants to expand in you. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Those were lovely poems. I'm going to read a poem by Arthur Rimbaud. Flowers. From a golden step among silk cords, green velvets, gray gauzes, and crystal discs that turn black as bronze in the sun, I see the digitalis opening on a carpet of silver filigree of eyes and hair. Yellow gold pieces strewn over agate, monogamy columns supporting emerald domes, banquets of white satin and delicate sprays of rubies surround the water rose. Like a god with huge blue eyes and limbs of snow, the sea and sky lure to the marble terraces, the throng of roses, young and strong. Want to thank all the poets tonight. Thank Valerie Lockhart and the Minneapolis Television Network for putting this on, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Ron, and thank you, Valerie. It was a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you all. Thanks, Ron.
Yep. So Scott, you writing poems? Were you writing poetry way back when you worked at the Valley? You're muted.
Did I mute again?
Now you're fine.
Okay, good. Yep. Yeah, no, I was right. Yeah, I was writing then.
Oh,
It was
okay.
it was ugly, but I was writing. Yeah, yeah.
Too bad I didn't know about that. 'Cause I
Yeah,
was writing then too.
well, Mr. Lilacs was sitting holding court downstairs.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know you were writing that either, but yeah.
Yeah, both I was writing, well, me and Brian Anderson, if you remember Brian.
Which one? Who was he?
He was, I think by the time you worked there, he was an office manager. He was a friend of Nick Santiago. You remember Nick?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a friend of Nick's.
Okay.
Me and him went to the U for English majors. I never finished the English degree.